Sports podcast.
Welcome to the All Sports Podcast with me, Matt, and today, Joel, how are you, mate?
Hi, Matt. All good, mate. How are you?
Also good. And James, how are you?
Yeah, all okay, guys.
Fantastic. Off we zoom. As I've said zoom, I feel like we should start with Formula One. Should we start with Formula One? Does that sound effect come across so well?
That was impressive. Not an inserted noise. I feel like it needs to be clarified. That was amazing, Matt. What is that sound?
It is possibly the only sound effect that I can do. Formula One car and Irish accent are my forte. Anyway.
Speaks to the Formula One car. I don't think we need the other demo.
Okay. All right. Into the Formula One then. So we had week 2 of the season with Shanghai in China, and I thought that it was a little bit of a boring weekend until it was no longer the weekend. The race was finished, and then all the drama started, as actually regularly happens with Formula
I feel
One.
like it happens a lot at the moment with F1.
It's usually something around the weekend that's going on rather than what actually happens this weekend. But we'll go sequentially through it. Obviously, we've spoken about Lewis Hamilton now being in the Ferrari. What an incredibly strong driver lineup they have with Leclerc and Hamilton. And it was Hamilton that took all of the first day's news with the sprint. He qualified pole for sprint as well, didn't he, James? Qualified pole for sprint and then won the sprint.
He did, yeah. The big part of the weekend has been qualifying, just because. So, for some context, China has put down new surface recently, and the tyre deg as you're following behind in China is really high. So, like it was a race where people were looking after their front left tyres, because as soon as your tyres went, your timing's really dropped off. So those that led the races from the front were able to stay out of dirty air, keep their tyres maintained properly, and then they were just able to sort of keep pace that no one else could really follow, which is definitely the story for the sprint, because Hamilton didn't have the fastest car, but I think he finished 8 or 9 seconds ahead in the end.
Yeah, and everyone's tyres were starting to fall off at the end of the sprint. And that's the thing with the sprint, is you can't really make a pit stop. It kind of has to be one set of tyres and which car can preserve them the best.
Yeah, I think in general with China this year, the tyres were too hard. They didn't deg enough for them to really have an interesting race. Like you saw this time was a one stop in the main race. I think most guys started mediums, did 20 laps and then did the rest on hards without really dropping that much time. The example of a few different teams doing 2 stops and got nowhere near them really, because it just wasn't the fastest strategy. So I think if they were to come back here next year, they would pick a softer compound. So, each tyre has a grading of softness. So you have soft, medium and hard. But amongst those, you have like C1, C2, C3, which is how soft those hard tyres are, if that makes any sense. So what they've essentially done is just give them tyres that are far too good, and they didn't really have to stop.
Well described.
I sat there at 7 a.m. listening to Crofty and Martin Brundle explain it all. So now I feel like I know what I'm talking about.
So after the sprint race, which was won by Hamilton, after him getting a little bit of negative feedback, from pretty much everyone and anyone that commented on the Formula One.
For making the move, or
just that maybe he's not quite, maybe it's the bad move for him, maybe it's a bad move for Ferrari. There are other options available, like keeping Sainz actually wouldn't have been a bad option.
A vanity move by both parties.
Who would have thought it? In F1?
It probably looked like it, but he's still probably one of the best 3 drivers in the 20. I think a lot of the noise was about him being too old, and the last 4 years at Mercedes haven't been great for him. But if you like he's proved pretty early on, put him in a competitive car and he can still bring it home in the first position.
Yeah,
very, very interesting. You'd say that one of the 3 best drivers. Who would you say the other 2 are? Obviously Max Verstappen. Then who's your third?
Verstappen. I mean, I don't think Norris is all that, so I'd probably say Verstappen, Leclerc and Hamilton are the 3 best drivers.
Interesting.
You put any of those 3 in the McLaren last year and they win it by 50, 60 points.
Are we saying the McLaren is that much better than...
Oh, it's a rocket ship. Yeah.
Really?
It is a little bit on the edge, like the way they describe it. Like it can misbehave a little bit, but I think when it's on, it is that much faster than everybody else. Like Norris is, I think over the 6 qualifying rounds that we saw, whenever he had to put a lap together, he was like half a second quicker.
Was it kind of visible? It's obviously a very short period of the race, but was it kind of visible at the start because Russell seemed to get the best start of the front three, but was still third after the third corner?
I think the start of the race was interesting because Russell got the best start, but he got sort of cut off by Piastri as they were going around that first corner, which opened it up for Norris to go around the end of him. Norris actually tried that in the sprint and got it completely wrong, so it was pretty ballsy to try it again. But I would say that Piastri did a really good job of getting his teammate ahead of Russell rather than Russell making a mistake.
Yeah, I think it was a pincer. Yeah, I think it was a team move. I think it was a pincer movement. I think it was planned. And I think that Piastri is looking incredible. I think that one of the things to the detriment of McLaren is that they have 2 number 1 drivers. It was the issue that we had with them last season, if you remember, where Lando had to give the position back to Oscar Piastri and give him the race, where Piastri did deserve it and had been racing incredibly well. Anyway, skipping forward, I think Piastri looks like he could be flawless in this car if he gets it right. I think Norris is prone to more mistakes. I think, talking about the top 3 drivers, it may well be Verstappen, Leclerc, and Oscar Piastri. I do rate Hamilton and his experience. I don't think he's the driver he was 6 years ago. But I just think, with this car, like you said, the rocket ship of the McLaren, if either of them are going to have a flawless season, it's going to be Piastri, not Norris.
Yeah, I agree with that point. Piastri is more of a perfectionist, a technical driver who's maybe not have these big flashes of brilliance, but he's going to be completely consistent throughout the year, which I know for the last few years you've seen someone win most of the races and win the championship, but that's not usually how it goes. Whoever finishes top 4, top 5 the most, with a few wins, will be in the shout of the win. And I think that's what Piastri does. I know Melbourne was a bit of a rogue one with one spin, but he's always there and thereabouts. But to your point about Leclerc, he has been in this team for 6 years. This car has been designed around him, and Hamilton has outqualified him. He's won a sprint within 2 races in a new team. I just don't think that. I think long term, like throughout the season, he's only going to get better. And as they work out setups that fit his driving style, they are probably the second fastest team.
The only thing, second fastest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's Mercedes.
Half a Red Bull. Yeah, half a Red Bull, because Max Verstappen is just going to get the most out of the car. The car, like talking about a car being built around Leclerc, Max Verstappen, or the Red Bull, is just built exclusively for Max Verstappen's driving style.
It's also the 4th quickest car. It's not in a good way. It came alive at the end of the race, but in the sprint, he wasn't really dominating. In qualifying, he is dragging this car forward. If you put Lawson and Tsunoda in those cars at the same time, they are a mid-table.
Well, back of the pack. Lawson is obviously, we're jumping around a bit. So the McLaren are going to win the constructors. Something dramatic will have to happen because all of the teams are going to stop developing their car after the summer because they're going to be focused on the new regs for next season because they're so significantly different if they're not already.
Yeah.
So McLaren will walk it. It's just, is Norris and Piastri taking points from each other going to hinder their chances of actually winning the championship? So the driver is very much up for grabs.
That's where Red Bull are in the driving, like in the sort of the ascendancy, because they have one driver who they will prioritise the whole time. The other 3 teams have 2 drivers who will take points off each other all season. So I'm very interested to see how it goes. I think Piastri, from what I've watched from him, he's probably the favourite over Norris, just because he's more consistent. But it's a weird one with McLaren because they always say they're free to race, but whenever you hear them in a 1-2, they're always like, bring it home. Like, this is your points to earn over a season, don't make a mistake. So I don't really know what their plan is, who they're favouring.
No, and I don't think they'll make that decision until there's a clear distinction between the 2.
Yeah, but they might have to if Verstappen's taking points more regularly.
Yeah, and with Verstappen, I'm already hearing that Lawson might get the chop and they might bring in Tsunoda.
Yeah, I mean, he's qualified dead last twice in a row, missed Q3 in all 3 qualifyings. No, sorry, not got out Q1 all 3 qualifyings. And Tsunoda's been in Q3 twice in an RB. Verstappen did come out and say that Lawson would be much quicker in an RB than he would be in a Red Bull at the moment, just because it is that difficult to drive. So I think to swap them would be ambitious, but it's not against the Red Bull way. I think it'd be nice to give Yuki the car in Japan in his home race, but with how it's going, he could be dead last in it as well.
Yeah, it would be interesting. People are saying Perez is probably the person that's laughing the most at the moment. But
Daniel Ricciardo's the one that should be annoyed.
possibly, but it was also Ricciardo's choice to leave Red Bull to start with
Yeah.
back in the day. Had he have not, then maybe he'd still be driving in the Red Bull.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed with all that.
So where are Ferrari in the results table for the weekend then? They didn't come home. How they finished up, they did both come home in 5th and 6th. Cross the line.
Yeah, 5th and 6th across the line.
Not bad points then.
Unfortunately not. It was the double disqualification that I don't think I've seen while watching Formula One.
Well, apparently it's the first time in 50 years. I don't know if that's just the first time for Ferrari. I think it's first time for Ferrari ever,
Yeah.
and the first time in F1 in 50 years.
You don't see races getting disqualified a lot, so to see 3 in one go was, probably indicative of the racetrack and the degradation. But yeah, both Ferraris disqualified, no points for them. Obviously, they got 10 or so in the sprint, but it's left them quite far down in the constructors after 2 rounds because it's promoted teams like Williams got double points in the end, Albon and Sainz. Haas got double points, Ocon and Behrman. So I think they might be 5th or 6th so far.
So Ferrari are joint, they're joint 4th with Williams, but Williams are above them because they have got a better finishing positions. They're on 17 points. Mercedes in second on 57. Mercedes are 40 points ahead of Ferrari already, and McLaren in first on 78 points, already running away with it.
Yeah, also Mercedes, the car looks quick, and Antonelli it's not been an amazing start, but it's been very bright for a rookie. Like, he was 8th in the end.
Very solid.
Higher after promotions, yeah. He never really looked like challenging the top 5 in the race, but yeah, he's got a lot of raw speed.
Yeah, so he finished 6th. He finished 6th in the race after the disqualifications. In the sprint, he was 8th. Like, theoretically, he was 8th in both. And then, obviously, he had his 6th place finish last week as well. I'm going to say something like that.
He's got 4th. He's got quite a lot of points.
Yeah, so he's doing really well in terms of the sure.
Yeah, the rookies is interesting because obviously there's so many of them this year. They were like comparing the times on Sunday. And Lawson just stands out like a sore thumb in probably with the best car. Maybe Mercedes better, and he was the slowest of the rookies, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, well, I shared it with you guys on Saturday after the sprint qualifying had happened, that actually 3 of the rookies had outperformed their 3 senior teammates. But then when it came to actual race qualifying and the race itself, that was all reversed and experience told. And I think actually the Chinese Grand Prix, thank goodness that there was a little bit of controversy because, like you said, resurfaced and just a little bit of a road, and it was quite processional. There were just 2 corners that you could overtake, and that was just DRS enabled.
Yeah, the big thing with rookies, like the hardest skill for them to learn is like the tyre management side. And so Piastri in his first year had the same problem at McLaren. Like, that was his fall off, is when he had to look after his tyres. Obviously, he's learned it in the 2 seasons since. So these guys will pick it up, but it was always going to be probably one of the biggest races for them to learn to do this skill. So yeah, I mean, it's great having some of them in because they are like Hadjar has just got a raw speed. He's very quick.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to make overtakes as well. So it's not like boring racing at the back. They're all just trying to gut each other.
Ollie Behrman as well did a sneaky little overtake, although it was just on Liam Lawson and gave it the big chow.
Yeah, they're on about Lawson not even swapping to the RB, aren't they? Like, they're on about him losing his seat and them going to bring Colapinto in, which would be pretty brutal. 2 races to lose your seat completely.
I told you last season I liked Franco Colapinto. He was impressive. I'm surprised he didn't get a seat, but I think they just ran out of seats for drivers this year.
He's behind Jack Doohan, who they signed before, who I don't think is any good. So I think he's been signed as a reserve to Alpine, and I think it's sort of Jack Doohan's days are numbered, put it that way.
Is there any restrictions on how you can chop and change your lineup?
I don't think so. I don't know if there's a limit to how many times you can do it, because surely you would just have 3 races and pick the best track. Does that not make sense? Like a substitute, but
Yeah.
I've never seen teams swap more than once. Like, Red Bull are notorious for doing it, but no one else really does it. I think it happened to
I guess because Red Bull got more than one team.
and they
Red Bull did it. Did Red Bull do it with Gasly, Ricciardo, and Albon all in one season?
no, they moved.
No, Kvyat, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kvyat, not Gasly.
Kvyat lost his spot to Gasly. Then Gasly didn't Gasly lost his spot to Albon, and then Albon lost it to Perez. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Either way.
I get because they've got 4 seats as well, so they just do tend to promote someone from the junior team and demote someone from the senior team.
Yeah, their stable of drivers is phenomenal.
It is, but that second seat is a little bit cursed at Red Bull. Like, you think of the drivers that failed there recently. Albon and Gasly are two, very good midfield drivers and couldn't get anywhere near being good enough for the Red Bull.
Yeah, you've got to go back pretty much to the Vettel days to actually have competitive number twos like Mark Webber.
Yeah, Ricciardo as well for Verstappen got quite close, but the car wasn't as good then. They had a lot of issues with engines blowing up that year, didn't they? But yeah, I think it'll be a good season. We've got a couple of week break now, and then we are...
Couple of week break, then into Suzuka.
Yeah.
What a great track that is.
Fantastic. Another strange time one for us, though.
Is it like another 4 a.m?
I don't think it's that bad. I think it might be like 6 or 7 again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfectly respectable. Nice deep dive into F1 anyway.
Also,
I didn't show you the depth of my debit card, unfortunately, to illustrate just how ridiculously small the margin was that Hamilton got disqualified. Shall I do it anyway? There you go.
Yeah.
Is this the second time that this has happened to Hamilton in the last 2 seasons?
I think to Russell last year at Spa. Was it Russell?
Yeah, it was Hamilton.
That.
Yeah.
What if Russell got disqualified when he was first and Hamilton ended up winning?
I think Russell got disqualified for weight, and Hamilton has been disqualified for skid block as well.
Oh, has he? Yeah, it's quite a thing to do because at the era that we're in, it's all about ground effect cars, so that the lower you run them, the better they perform. So, you get too tight to the ground and you bottom out too much, you're going to take too much off that block and get disqualified. So it is, I think it's more science than you think. It's not just like, this week we're going to guess. So it's not supposed to happen a lot, this disqualification.
And what, they put this component on the car every week? Or
It's just a wooden plank, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a wooden plank. It's a skid block.
There's a wooden plank in F1 cars?
It's a wooden plank to measure it.
It is a wooden plank, and there's skid blocks attached to it, basically to protect the underfloor of the car, but also to manage the height between the floor of the car and the ground, so that they're not riding too low.
It was brought in as a safety measure, wasn't it? Because it was running too low, and drivers were essentially burning themselves against the floor. Was that the original reason for it?
I'm not sure the origins of that now.
But yeah, it is literally like these are the most high-tech cars in the world, and they have a low-technology way of doing it. It's great.
And then, Leclerc's disqualification was on the overall weight of the car. Despite his front wing coming off, they then replace it to weigh it, so it's not to do with that. But the car should weigh at least 800 kilograms, and his weighed 799.9 kilos. So probably the weight of the width of my debit card and Lewis Hamilton's missing plank. So pretty brutal.
So what are the scales that they use before the race? If they look badly calibrated, or do they not weigh the cars?
I mean, it's just Ferrari, isn't it? We thought they'd got away with the weekend without making any Ferrari-esque mistakes, but here we are with a double disqualification. It can only be man-made fault. It's not like factories produced a skid block that's the wrong size.
Yeah,
is fuel?
That'll be
from the Leclerc point of view.
It is, yeah. Fuel is involved with that as well. They would have factored in probably having a safety car or a virtual safety car at some point, which would have reduced the fuel consumption. They didn't have that, and they also only did they only stop once?
That's so.
I think
risky.
It's high risk, yeah, but they also only stopped once, which obviously reduces the fuel consumption as well.
Yeah.
Lack of stops and also no safety car meant that they the risk didn't pay off.
The weird thing was that usually when teams know they're under fueling, they ask for a bit of like what they call lift and coast. So you lift off the
True.
acceleration into a corner, brake a little bit later, and save fuel that way. But they didn't. There was none of that on the comms. Like, there's none of that on the radio saying lift and coast, you're low on fuel. So I think
Not that I've seen.
they've got it bang on and just got it slightly wrong.
I mean, they got it off by a gram, and they got Hamilton's off by a millimetre, less than a millimetre. So a gram and a millimetre is all that it takes in F1 to get a double disqualification, and already write yourself out of the constructors.
Yeah, the margins are fine.
A lot of races left, 22 more to go, and 5 sprints. So there's a lot of points there.
Lots of points up for grabs. All right, where are we off to next in the world of sport?
No clever segue.
All right, little touch on international football then.
We're midway in through.
Well, yeah, game in progress.
Yeah,
And they've literally just scored. England have literally just scored. Reece James from a free kick.
It's nice to see he's not in crutches.
Yeah, it's absolutely mad seeing him play for England again. I feel like he doesn't really play for Chelsea. Am I wrong about that? And Chelsea managing him
Yeah,
because of these injuries.
there'll be minutes for him, but he is. I think the problem is when he's fit.
That is unbelievable. Freak.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see that it said Reece James free kick. I didn't know he'd be on.
Oh no, he's got a wicked free
Yeah,
kick.
he's got an amazing free kick. Yeah, I mean, that is unbelievable.
I actually think that team is very.
Postage stamp.
I like that team. Put Saka in for Bowen. It's a great team.
Yeah, I like that team as well. And I didn't watch on Friday night, wasn't it? So I haven't seen it, but I have seen the comments after the game. And I think like from what I've read about the game, it sounds like quite a typical performance from this England side, like a little bit hesitant and maybe not convincing enough or whatever. And then you kind of hear what Tuchel has to say afterwards, and I think that's where the difference is. So he was quite forthcoming in what he thought of the players' performances. Obviously, England won 2-0. And I feel like if Gareth Southgate was there talking about it, he probably would have been doubling down on the result, saying, controlled the game, won 2-0, nothing to see here type of thing. Maybe that's not fair, but that's what I feel like he would have said. And then Tuchel kind of comes out and says, we need more. Like there's players out there who aren't doing what we would expect them to be doing in those areas of the pitch. He kind of focused on the wingers, and said that they just weren't being direct enough. And then a couple of days later, obviously in the build up to Monday night's game, he's obviously been asked the question. You criticised the wingers the other day. What are you going to change that or whatever? And he just said, it's not criticism. I just need to be able to talk bluntly about players' performances, and I want the players to be blunt with each other and with myself, and that's how I want to be with them. So I think he brings that kind of change of culture to it, and that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. That's the biggest difference I've seen, I think.
I think significant from Southgate, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think because he's on this 18-month contract, and he made this point about he only has 24 training sessions between now and the World Cup, he has to be more direct in ways that he can't manage them like a domestic club where you get so much time with them, you can integrate teams. He has to hold them accountable, and they have to hold each other accountable to these performances. These actually matter. Look, we're playing Albania; they're not difficult games, but your performance matters here because you have to set the right way of playing. You have to hold each other accountable. If they're not doing what he's after, he's going to say it, which I think is the right way to do it.
I like it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a World Cup qualifier. They, at the minute, scored 3, not conceded any. 2 wins is exactly what we wanted from the international window.
Tonight's a friendly, but yes.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, Friday night's game was a qualifier, and all that matters really.
This is a qualifier.
This is a game. Yeah.
Latvia, in our group. I mean,
friendly.
We've also got who else is in our group? Serbia and.
Why didn't friendly then? Because one of these was friendly, wasn't it?
Why is there some groups that have 5 teams, some that have 4?
And Andorra is the last team in our group. I don't know, James. Seeding. Guess.
No.
Well,
no.
I've
just got that wrong. I don't know why they have different sized groups.
But again, this is going on the same time as the Nations League play.
Yeah, I know. I was so
Yeah,
confused.
I was really
Last night.
confused. What is going on?
This is going on at the same time.
But these teams that are playing in the Nations League, they also have World Cup qualifying to play as well.
Yeah, they do. And wiring, because England won their group, didn't they? So did we automatically get promoted? We were in a playoff.
Yeah, that's what I think has happened, because England got relegated in the Nations League and then won their Nations League group, so they can't compete to win the Nations League, I don't think.
There was playoffs going on as well. So if you came second, I think you played bottom of the group above. Like Scotland played Greece, they lost. Wales played Kazakhstan, and I think they won. But yeah, I've got no idea what goes on. Yeah, it's not very simple.
This is the international equivalent to the European Conference League, isn't it?
I think it's even worse. The Conference League is just a mini Champions League. This Nations League just makes no sense. It's like a club championships for internationals.
Yeah, I mean, you win the Nations League and no one's saying they've won an international trophy, are they?
I would if England did it.
Arteta would. I think Arteta counts the Emirates Cup friendlies in August as a...
Did Portugal win it, and was Roberto Martinez trying to claim it? I don't know if that's true, but somebody was.
I saw Ronaldo popped up with a goal.
He did pop up with a goal, and Højlund had scored in the first leg and executed the sue that Ronaldo was asked about after the game.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he said, no problem. I don't have a problem with him doing it. I'm sure it wasn't any kind of disrespect or whatever. Lots of people do it in lots of sports, blah, blah, blah. And then he went, but I hope I'm doing it tomorrow night. And yeah.
And he did.
Ronaldo scored and delivered an emphatic sue.
Class is permanent. Yeah. So he's now on 929 career goals, 71
I thought you were going to say 929 caps or something then. How many caps have he got for Portugal? It is absolutely mad.
Promise he won't retire, and there's nothing going to bench him, so it's just going to keep going.
And he's not going to retire until he gets these 1,000 goals.
I mean, the Saudi League, he's not like scoring bags and bags of goals. I know he's getting 20 a season, but he needs more than that to get to his number in the next couple of years.
Every time I see clips of him, he's got a bib on. So he's spending a lot of time on the bench, I think.
Not for Portugal. That's not allowed.
No. Well, he's basically the manager, isn't he?
Right. Can I tell you about rugby?
You can.
Yeah.
I've got to go.
It was lovely.
See you, Jane.
See you, bye.
Right, so we had the Six Nations rugby last weekend, and this week we have gone back to club fixtures.
And obviously international players coming back, but very different.
Almost.
Very different.
Yeah.
How they're being reintegrated, right?
Yeah, someone's used ChatGPT well today.
It was on 5 Live the other day, and they were talking about how I just find it fascinating that they can be prescriptive with the fact that they need to be rested. Is it 1 week out of the 3 back? Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So they've
mad. Is it because
it's the total amount of minutes played? So they're trying to manage. It's not just managing international players' minutes. It's the intensity of a rugby game. And those minutes and those collisions, you are protecting and preserving someone's career in essence. So it is for the good of the game, and any players association would say that managing minutes is the right thing to do, but then also why don't you extend the season and have mandatory break for everyone? But so that's not the case, and what they do have to do, international, I think that play, there's limits for who has to have the week break. I think it's if you play more than 200 minutes in the Six Nations tournament, then you have to have a week break in one of the first 3 back with your club. But like you said, that played out differently for different teams. Obviously, I support Harlequins, and they were going away to Saracens, who were having their big game. Now, Saracens host their big game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They had a sellout of 55,000 people there. So they played all of their England internationals, and Harlequins did not. And I thought
Harlequins have got big games coming up as well, haven't they?
Very big, specifically away to league leaders Bath next weekend, Saturday the 29th. And Bath's squad is just absolute all-star. I don't know with the salary cap how they do it, but they do. So they do have that coming up, but Saracens was big enough. And to be honest, if Harlequins hadn't beaten Saracens this weekend, spoiler, they did beat
Which
them.
they did by the sounds of it, yeah.
I wouldn't be talking this extensively about Quins if they hadn't won, but had they not, if you look at how close the table is, the Premiership table this year, going for those top 4 spots to get into the top 4 playoffs for the actual finals. If they hadn't have won the points, then Saracens would have been in a very commanding position. They'd have been on 38, possibly 39 points. Harlequins would have been on 1, and that would have been 4th spot tied up, and too much of a gap with only a handful of games to go for Quins to resolve. So surprisingly, without their England internationals, Harlequins got the job done, and it was 23 unanswered points in the second half, and it was like their reserve players, like their fly half Jamie Benson, who has got a 96% kicking accuracy. So I think he's only missed 1 kick from any of the games that he's played. He's played a lot of substitute appearances, and then he's played a lot of Prem Cup, which is like the equivalent to the League Cup in football. So he's played a lot of those games, but he's only missed 1 conversion in all of that time.
And it sounds phenomenal.
It is phenomenal, considering some of his kicks were just shy of the halfway line. They were out wide, difficult angles. Yeah, and he was phenomenal. He came on and he was phenomenal. They've got up and coming centres in Waghorn and Oscar Beard. Oscar Beard was with the England Six Nations side, but he didn't get any caps, but he did go away with England for the Six Nations. So they've got those 2 centres that ran riot in the second half. So it was just, it was the Harlequins show, and the Harlequins that I enjoy watching play. Free running rugby. It was a dominant scrum as well for Harlequins in the second half, and just thoroughly enjoyable, especially against your arch rivals, ruining their big day.
Yeah.
As they've done to us many times, the big game that we host at Twickenham every year, we've done it against them a few times, and they've had our pants down. So, yeah, so it was a good weekend for Harlequins. Another team that struggled this weekend that have quite a few England players is Northampton Saints. They lost in their local derby. It was the derby weekend, and they lost in their local derby 33-0 to Leicester. So Leicester came to visit and absolutely hammered them. So that's Northampton Saints' league season finished, it looks like now. Although they won it last season, and then they lost.
Saying they lost keepers.
Courtney Laws was probably their biggest one. The year before, they lost Dave Ribbons, who was an England second row. They've handfuls of players they've had go, but they've also still got handfuls of England players. Alex Mitchell, Tommy Freeman, Fraser Dingwall, Pearson when he's fit, Alex Moon when he's fit as well. So they've got a lot. But they're not doing it in the league this year. Very hard to go back to back, and Bath are probably looking the favourites at the moment. So yeah, on to next weekend. So very difficult fixture. Quins going away to Bath, but they will have all of their England internationals back.
Be interesting if it translates into, I think a lot of the time, we're looking at it through a football lens. Like you think, big players coming back, it's going to be fine. They're going to get better, and then it doesn't really pan out like that.
Yeah, a good example of that was a few years ago, the England players had come back from the World Cup, and I was watching a Quins game, and Joe Marler basically committed an offence, as he used to do quite regularly. And he said to the ref, "Look, you've got to understand it from my perspective. I've just come back from the World Cup." And he's right. It's like you come crashing back down to playing up in Sale on a Friday night in the rain in November, and it's very, very different to what they were at the time they had been playing in Japan. So yeah, I think it's very difficult to adjust to the different styles, as it must be for football as well. I mean, we're going to have players in the in the Prem that are going to be coming back from South America. Jet lag, different styles of football. Some of them will have picked up knocks. Some of them won't have got game time. There's a lot of emotional stuff that goes on as well.
Yeah, tons of factors.
All right, well, we will have maybe next week, maybe the week after. Probably next week we'll start building up to it. We've got the Masters coming, a highlight of our year. A lot more football going on again next weekend with the FA Cup back. Still not back to Premier League football. As we said, there's a bit
No
more...
Premier League of the weekend at all?
I don't believe so.
Well, it's news to me, that is. I mean, not that I'm bothered because my team are in the quarterfinals, but yeah, I am surprised about that. But
yeah, Saturday 29th, FA Cup.
Yeah, it's all FA Cup. Yeah,
PNE up to Preston North End. Are you?
And I am up to Preston North End on Sunday, actually.
Amazing.
Yeah, so
one of the classic teams in the English Football League, Preston North End.
It's lovely.
So that should be a good visit.
Yeah, I feel like if you get to I mean, there's lots of reasons why this is a good draw for Villa. But yeah, one of them is that Preston are a big name in the English Football League. Like they just always have been. Had some of the most famous players there back in the day and stuff like that. So yeah, I've never been to Deepdale, so chance to go there. I don't think Villa's record there is particularly good, but yeah, you obviously you want Championship, you want a team from a lower league. An away tie is for the supporters ideal, and then yeah, you want them to be a lower league team of some repute, and that's definitely Preston.
Yeah, kind of now, not so much as it was probably in the past, but now more ironically nicknamed the Invincibles. So good luck. All right, well, enjoy your weekend. We'll catch up afterwards.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. You can subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. You can get in touch at allsportspods@gmail.com. And we will catch you on the next one. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.